Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast, episode 200. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011, and today I'm once again joined by TJ, aka at TurnbasedTJ. TJ, how's it going?
It's going good, man.
Good.
I hope it's going good for you.
Yeah, it is. I appreciate you hopping on. We're going to have some lengthy discussions for our topics today, I feel, which I'm definitely looking forward to jumping into with you and picking your brain on some of them. So, yeah, thanks for hopping on. I appreciate it. And on such a big episode of 200. Awesome.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. It's an honor to get a good number like that.
Yeah. Chat, if you guys want to join in on the discussion and watch the podcast live, you can go over to twitch.tv/Enigma9011. You can drop a follow, join in on the fun and chaos. But if you can't catch it live, that is A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video in MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, you see that sub button, that follow button? If you guys can hit that, that would help out the channel immensely. Helps us grow, helps us keep going. So, simple click, do that, and you get, tuned in with all the episodes and all that stuff. They're right there in your feed. So yeah, do that. But yes, TJ is back. We got a full episode talking some games, talking some comics. We're going to jump into the games right now. If you've been watching stream lately, I have recently jumped into Baldur's Gate 3, thanks to TJ and his Channel Point Redemption. So we're going to be talking about Baldur's Gate 3 today. It's hard to say no spoilers because everybody kind of has their own journey and adventure in this game, it seems. So it's kind of up to you what you're going to experience in this game. So we're just going to have a fun conversation about it. So yeah, TJ, let's, I guess, just start right off the bat. What are your impressions of Baldur's Gate 3?
I absolutely love the game. Like a lot of people, obviously it's winning Game of the Year and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that I love the most about it is it made me discover an entire new genre of games. I'd never played those games before because I didn't want to get through the... usually this subgenre has an issue with like budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times in Baldur's Gate, everything's voice acted and like camera shot. But in a lot of the games, like Rogue Trader I'm playing right now, or like the Owlcat Pathfinder games, it'll just be text.
Oh, okay.
And it's like a lot of text, but there'll be like instances or events that are just text. So it'll be like your party ran up, got attacked by some bandits or whatever. And instead of seeing that, you're just reading the text about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that always kind of took me out of it. But then Baldur's Gate, obviously the production value is so high. I gave it a try and I was like, this type of game is actually incredible. The amount of stuff you can do in it. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even just dipping my toes into it this past week. Yeah, seeing all the options like we've talked about on stream, just knowing the little bit I do of D&D and having that experience and seeing it translate into a game, the amount of options and spells and obviously dialogue choices, like it's incredible what this team in Larian Studios has put into this title, and I can't imagine how many work hours it took and like charting everything out and stuff like that. It's insane.
Yeah, especially because I did stuff really out of order for my first playthrough.
Okay.
Like I went and did stuff and I came back around and did stuff I should have done earlier probably. And all of the characters, every NPC acknowledged the actions that I had already previously done. They're like, hey, we need you to do this quest. I'm like, oh, but you already found this person. You just didn't grab them. So like, go back and get them basically. And I was like, that's really, they all kind of, react to what you do and what you're doing and what you did. And I just didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So you mentioned your first playthrough. How many playthroughs and hours have you put into this game if you had to guesstimate?
Okay, I've only made the two characters and I haven't gotten very far with my second. He's probably about as far as your character is.
Okay.
Your druid is the second character. But I wanted to make a completely evil character because this is not really a spoiler. You already did the first mission or whatever, but one of the central conflicts of the first act, because there's multiple, but one of them is there's a goblin camp and there's a good guy camp, like a druid camp. And you can side with either camp and have one destroy the other, or you can destroy both of them, or you can save both. So it's really cool. I wanted to do that and kind of get a completely different second playthrough. But sorry, to answer the question, it's just the two characters. My main character is at the very end of Act 2.
Oh, wow. So okay, so you haven't even finished it yet.
Hours.
Okay, damn.
Nope.
Okay. Okay.
Wow. There's a lot of people I know who have not finished the game, but they have like 5 characters because they keep re-rolling
Sure.
Act 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
especially if you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, especially if you haven't played D&D, like, how do you know if you're gonna like a sorcerer more than a crusader or whatever? You got to try it out.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, you mentioned like making the evil character. Like even off stream, yeah, I'm already thinking of like, oh, well, maybe my own playthrough, do it this way or whatever it is. It's crazy, yeah. Just thinking of, like you said, those different scenarios, how you take it, and you mentioned the Goblin Camp just for the one example. Thinking outside the box. Shout out to the Trophy Room, a PlayStation podcast. Kyle and Joe went through their Game Award show as of recording. It came out last week. And they both, Baldur's Gate ended up being their game of the year. But they were talking about like just, yeah, the amount of freedom, thinking of what out of the box things you could do. Oh, there's an enemy under a chandelier. Maybe instead of attacking the enemy, I should attack the chandelier to hit them, or solve this puzzle this way. Or like you mentioned with encampment, you get to pick what you do. Like my brain just automatically was like, oh, help those guys. Didn't even consider like, what are my options here? And to see a studio like this do something like that, where it's so open to the player that you can pretty much make your own story, it's fascinating. It's also scary too, because I know people are like, well, then I'm gonna miss all this other stuff. I guess that's where the replayability comes in, but it's interesting to see everybody walk away with slightly, or some different elements of their experience from this. And then, yeah, obviously making the new characters to jump back into it. It's good that it has this kind of livelihood, and hopefully it sticks around for a while,
Yeah, definitely. I feel like Larian games in particular as well. Like before, I couldn't afford Baldur's Gate 3 right when it came out. I had to wait like 3 weeks or so.
Sure.
But I was like so hyped to play it that I ended up playing their previous title, Divinity Original Sin 2.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And same developers, same combat system pretty much, although it's not licensed by D&D, so they have like different spell names and stuff.
Okay.
But very difficult game. That is a game that I had to play. I played it for 20 hours and then I had to delete my character and start again.
Oh.
Because you just don't really understand how the mechanics of the game are going to work, especially not playing a CRPG before.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I need to play this game for like 40 hours to figure out how I should build my character even to begin with.
Sure.
So then I would have to go back and kind of respect my character like that. And I feel like a lot of players have had the same experience with Baldur's Gate as well. They're like, I didn't realize I was going to kind of need this thing leveling up or this class.
Gotcha.
So you kind of, the second playthrough, I feel like with Larian games are kind of the true playthrough, because now you're like, now that I know what I'm doing, like,
Yeah.
I kind of know what to expect.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't realize I'm looking at the games they developed here. So you mentioned the Divine Divinity series. So they got Divine Divinity Beyond Divinity, Divinity 2, Dragon Commander Original Sin. They didn't make the other Baldur's Gate. I didn't realize that.
No, actually, the people who made Baldur's Gate went on to make Mass Effect and Dragon Age.
Okay.
But if you've played a recent Dragon Age game like Dragon Age Inquisition or Mass Effect Andromeda, they have strayed very far away from this kind of hardcore, more niche RPG experience. So it's kind of nice that studios like Larian have gone in to kind of fill that void while BioWare does whatever BioWare is doing right now.
Sure. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, at least from a development standpoint, because you mentioned you played the Divinity series. Like, okay, well, I guess that could be a question. How similar would you say Baldur's Gate 3 is to your experience with the Divinity series?
Very similar. Like gameplay wise, they use the same exact type of movement. You know how you had this is how much movement you have left.
Yep.
And it's not really on a grid. It's kind of free flowing. All that's the same. It's just as open and varied. Everything is voice acted in Divinity Original Sin 2, which is fantastic, including the narrator. But that's really the big difference, I would say, between that and Baldur's Gate 3. Is Baldur's Gate 3, the camera will zoom in, and every single person you talk to is voice acted and motion captured. Even the squirrels you talk to, I don't think they're motion captured, but they are voice acted, and they're animated. And so in Divinity Original Sin 2, it maintains the bird's eye view, and you just hear the dialogue. And a lot of times too, the reason they had a narrator is because of animation limitations. So they couldn't animate all of the small things the characters are doing. So the narrator will just say like the character grimaces at you and puts the knife in their pocket or whatever instead of you seeing that.
Okay.
So it's that kind of production quality, but that's really the only difference in the games, honestly, that I've noticed.
Okay. Interesting. So you have a little bit of experience, we've talked off stream, with D&D and games of that nature. How do you feel that Baldur's Gate like took those elements from the tabletop to the video game side? How do you feel they translated those, and do you think it's a steep learning curve for people?
It's definitely a steep learning curve. Because even when I know Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, which Baldur's Gate is based off of, is notorious for being like super rules light and like easier for people to get into and stuff. But even me, as someone who's played a lot of RPGs like in high school and stuff, Dungeons and Dragons always felt like it was too complicated for me. Which I know, like I said, I know it sounds dumb especially when people are playing Pathfinder and stuff, but like I just never really had a head for the whole, like when you're playing the tabletop game, it's like, okay, this person, you can only move 6 meters or whatever, and this person, I'm like, I can't, I don't want to.
Sure.
I want to make fart jokes at the item shop or whatever. Like I'm not trying to get a specific combat thing. So yeah, I would say it's definitely difficult to pick up in that respect. And as that, because combat's never been like the reason I play RPGs to begin with, I would say that a lot of games don't really nail that kind of, you can't nail the openness of a dungeon master as an NPC. They could say or do anything. They can, obviously you can't program that into a video game. So I feel like Baldur's Gate did a very good job as possible with giving you as many options as they could think of in a given scenario without, being truly limitless. I feel like that aspect has been better than any other game I've played previously. But again, I think it's just this genre I didn't realize existed. And it really does do that. Games like Disco Elysium or the Pathfinder games, they really do allow you to have those kind of dialogue options and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, like you said, or like we've said, seeing all the options and stuff. And you brought up the Dungeon Master. Like, I think this is a nice hybrid way to include the randomness, like you said, or maybe not randomness, but the obscurity that a DM can sometimes go into of like the creativity. Like having these options available to us, I'll agree, just adds that extra layer without having another actual person on the other side. It gives that illusion of a DM with the openness, if that makes sense. And that definitely is appreciated. And then, yeah, like you said, the learning curve's steep, and I don't want that to be like, oh, don't check this game out. Like, there's a lot of information, I feel, with, like, the amount of spells, especially, and skills that you can get at times. But it's one of those things, just like anything, if you put some time into it, gradually things will connect, make sense. Like, I know, for example, what's his name? Gale, the wizard I have. Like, that guy's got so many spells. I think I've only used, like, Firebolt as his offensive skill, because I'm just like, I like this one, and it works. It's kind of just, like, finding what works for you and going off of that. And then, obviously, if you want to kind of experiment and play with the other stuff, then it's there and available to you. But, yeah, it's just a matter of giving yourself time to learn that kind of stuff, I guess, to pick up on it.
Yeah, and I feel like even when you're playing, it doesn't take that long, I feel like, for a lot of the systems to kind of make themselves known. Like the resting system, I know you're still getting your head around
Sure.
the long rest and stuff, done it a couple times, but you'll notice the icons in the bottom of the screen where, I mean, you've already been reading through it and stuff, where it's like, okay, I can do 3 spells of this level, and it'll tell you when you hover over the spell, it'll say until short rest, until long rest, or whatever. So eventually you get to, it doesn't take that long. By the end of Act 1, if you decide to use like a wizard, which again, they are the hardest character to use because of the amount of options they have and spell management. But if you do, you'll start to realize you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to use these 2 spells in this combat. I'll save this 1 spell in case we get ambushed, and then I'm going to short rest and I'll do these spells. And that kind of like, all the systems meshing together like that, really, it just kind of starts to work really well.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, right now in my party, obviously I got my main character. I have Shadowheart, which is like a cleric, if I'm not mistaken. Lysel, the bruiser tank, and then Gale, the wizard. So I know there's other characters in here. What characters have you gravitated towards outside of obviously your original character?
Asterion, and also Asterion.
Okay.
Now he is the best. He is. I don't even know. Do you know much about Asterion or?
I know he won an award, and that's about it. No, he's like used a lot in promotional art. I feel him and his white
Okay,
locks.
I really want to say like one of the base character things you'll
Sure.
know about him as soon as you meet him, but it is better if you just see him, have it
Okay.
play out by him.
Okay.
So I won't spoil it,
Mm.
but just his character and a lot of things with it. I also really love Will
Mm.
though as well, because Will is also a warlock,
Okay.
which is my favorite D&D class, and it's cool because the companions, you've obviously seen it with Gale a little bit, but they put some story elements and stuff into the companions. They have their own kind of adventures and stories to go down. So seeing Will actually have like the warlock stuff play out into the game,
Mm-hmm.
where you see things that you would read about like warlocks dealing with in D&D, and you're like, that's really cool. And there's a decision earlier on where there's a companion named Karlak,
Okay.
and she's a tiefling,
Mm.
and she's just a big. You think Lysel is a bruiser? Just wait till you meet Karlak. She's a
Okay.
barbarian, so
Oh, okay.
she crushes. Um, and whether or not she's technically a demon because she's a tiefling.
Mm-hmm.
And Will is a demon hunter. So
Oh.
how you deal if you already have Will in your party when you come across Karlak, how you deal with that interaction because he is a warlock and has to do things due to his patron,
Mm.
can have drastic outcomes on the appearance and class of certain party members and stuff.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. So Will is definitely up there. I would say his story is pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's like half the cash right there. I think the other ones are great. I also did like that was my party. Was I chose Astarion, Will, and I went with Lysel for like a frontline fighter.
Okay.
Because, and you'll see pretty early on, fighters can they can get like 2 or 3 attacks a turn. So I'm
Sure.
getting up to like 4 attacks a turn. I'm killing 4 enemies a turn with this one fight. It's like that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I do appreciate you mentioned or allude to the Gale stuff. Like you mentioned, at least on stream, like I haven't seen this before. Like that's crazy to see how they put the depth into these characters and gave them their each own like stories and narratives. It's not spoiler because it's early on, but Shadowheart and Lysel obviously button heads constantly. No offense, Lysel's kind of a hard ass, but like
Oh no, she absolutely is.
yeah, it's fun seeing like especially with Gale just because that's what I've obviously experienced, but seeing that he's got some backstory, he has some struggles, and then running into one certain scenario with him dying, like that leading to this short little thing. I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to experiencing more with the other characters, and I think that's important because instead of them just being bodies, like they have a reason to be there and like importance, which I feel like a lot of games do well, but or a lot of games do, but when games do it really well, that's what makes the whole experience so much better. When you come to the conclusion of it and wrap it up, you're like, damn, I didn't just do a journey with myself in this game and my character, like all these other things too, just on top of it. Yeah, I'm interested to see how that continues
Like
throughout.
it gets kind of really crazy when you consider that like that team that I have of Will, Astarion, and Lysel. I use those 3 constantly because I've leveled them up so their abilities complement each other. I've made them like synergize with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it highly incentivizes me to keep using them for the rest of the game. So I probably will,
Mm-hmm.
and go through all the storylines, which means there's 7 of these kind of like Gale level voice acted companions.
Mm,
And you can only have 3 on your team at a time. So that means you could potentially do 2 runs and still not have really fully developed one of the companions.
sure.
Um, on top of so yeah, when you do a second run, you can have a completely different team. But on top of that, you can also through Withers, who you met, the skeleton guy, you can actually hire like nameless, faceless people to be on your
Oh,
team.
oh, okay.
So if you wanted to, you could play solo, or you could play with just like 3 random NPCs. If you didn't want to use the name characters and stuff. So there's a
Huh,
lot of options where, yeah, you could be 4 or 5 playthroughs in and still be using different companions. It's kind of crazy.
that's cool. That's cool. Now, when you going back to your character, when you made your first character, what were you aiming to create for yourself?
I mean, yeah, just narcissistically, I was definitely trying to recreate the D&D character from when I was like 17. I thought
Okay.
that would be kind of cool. And that's what you see on screen right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wood elf warlock. He finds his patron that gives him powers in the woods as a wood elf. Not the deepest storyline, but you know what? It works.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool. That's pretty much all I was trying to create with that. As I just knew I wanted to make a warlock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also, the fun thing about warlocks that I like is that even though they are a caster, they are a charisma-based caster,
Okay.
like the bard. So that means that, yeah, I should obviously level up charisma the most, and that's what my spells use. So my character automatically is just going to be passing a bunch of speech checks and persuasion and stuff like that just through me trying to optimize my magic. So I really liked that kind of synergy in the gameplay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're playing with your original character, is there a what's the term? I guess alignment, for lack of a better term. Is there a certain alignment that you tend to lean towards with your
Oh, yeah.
answers and prompts, or is it kind of free balling?
I try my best to go off of my character sheet, which was chaotic good.
Mm.
So it is good, but a little bit of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
I tend in video games though, especially because I know I'm doing like the evil playthrough for the second one, I tend to be a little bit more like nicer Mary
Sure.
Sue than the chaotic stuff. So I feel like I've probably played more of a good like a good neutral or something, or like
Sure.
a good lawful good. But you know, it's I've been trying to.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of players do that. Like, I definitely struggle with that. Like, you've seen it on stream. I'm like, I feel like I should say that, but this feels like a better way to put it. And I know Jeff, another regular, like, he's like, I hate doing renegade runs. I just can't. But yeah, this feels like a game that, I don't know, is a little bit more rewarding for doing that evil stuff. Like, I know there's been other games where there's been a evil route. Like, I'm going to shout out Infamous Second Son. Like, playing through that as, oh crap, what's his name? Delson? Yeah. Playing his evil route, the story's like barely different by doing the bad stuff compared to the good stuff. So it doesn't feel like there's any incentive to do it. But with this, it's more of a, I think, a morbid curiosity to see what the other options are, with the freedom of like, oh, you could do this, you could do this, do this. See how, like you said, it affects the world around you and how people talk about certain things or acknowledge your actions. So yeah, this one definitely seems to have a better balance of reward, I guess, for taking the the negative path instead of the good.
Well, I feel like it's more like, you know, like in Dishonored, right? If you take the negative path, you're like actively murdering people and causing plague and stuff. Like that is evil, like objectively. It's just bad. You're
Sure.
just being a bad guy. Um, D&D, I feel like doesn't really have such a strict like black and white view of people's actions, which is really cool to see played out in this game, because like being bad technically might not be bad. Like who's to say that siding with the goblins is bad? Like goblins are still alive. They still have their own objectives and stuff too. What if you're a goblin? You know, like what if you're a
Sure.
goblin sympathizer? So there's that, but there's also outside of the goblin camp even, there's a lot of factions. There's a location which do you know who Drizzt Do'Urden is? Okay, there's a book series from like the 90s into like the early 2010s. That's all I knew about D&D for a long time.
Gotcha.
But I was gonna say that the a location from that book is in the first act. I'm trying to do this without spoilers.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
But you meet other races other fantasy races and stuff.
Mm.
And depending on whether or not you're being quote unquote good or bad, like you could just side with them and like they're gonna treat you well and they're gonna treat you nicely, even though they're the quote unquote bad guys. So you don't
Gotcha.
feel like you're doing like an evil run per se. There's
Mm-hmm.
also a companion that you can only get if you side with the drow and the goblins and stuff.
Oh,
So
okay.
she is a drow herself. She's a dark elf, so she is kind of a more evil aligned character. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a like a reward basically for playing evil because you can't get her if you play a regular Mary Sue good guy playthrough.
But you can change her, TJ. No.
Oh, when you see her, you will try and change her.
Oh boy. Um, so with the game, you said you're still in Act 2 right now, right?
Yeah, I'm at the boss fight, Ketheric.
Okay, boss fight of Act 2. Okay. So it's hard to say without like obviously reaching the conclusion of the game. I was going to say like what is there anything more that you wish this game included or things that you wish were a little different in your experience playing this game?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to answer without finishing it.
Sure.
But just for personal taste, I do like my grid-based systems.
Okay.
For turn-based stuff, I have been playing Owlcat's Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the Pathfinder games, and that game is all set on a grid. And I enjoy combat in Rogue Trader like almost twice as much as Baldur's Gate because of that grid and abilities and stuff. There's also one thing I like about Rogue Trader that I wish they put in Baldur's Gate, but I understand the difference because in Rogue Trader there's guns, there's pew pews, and in Baldur's Gate it's just swords mostly. But when you start a combat in Baldur's Gate, the combat just starts wherever you're standing. Like
Yep.
if you're just standing in the open like a dumbass, then you're just gonna get hit in the open like a dumbass.
Yep.
In Rogue Trader, you do get a second to like the combat will start, and then you kind of have like a turn zero where you can move your characters not very far.
Sure.
But you can move them into cover, or you can put your tank up front and the backline guy in the back.
Yeah.
And I really wish they would add that kind of thing to Baldur's Gate because I can't tell you the amount of times I've started a combat and I've got a Starion who is a rogue with two knives, and he's in the front line right in front of everybody, right in front of a troll, and then I've got I've got Lizelle with her greatsword all the way in the back, and she's got to spend 2 turns trying to run up. It's a nightmare. So
Definitely. Yep, I had that with the door. We're all just piled in the doorway and we got to funnel our way through. Yeah, definitely. Oh God. I just walked in this room to see what was in here, and I didn't know there was a fight.
Yeah, it's like just give me an option to organize my characters before the fight starts.
Sure.
That's all.
Yeah, that definitely would be appreciated. Do you think they will add any DLC to this title, or do you think they're just gonna move on to the next project?
No, only because the developers have said so.
Oh,
But,
okay. Well, there you go.
no, they've said so for a good reason though.
Sure.
Because I think the max level in Baldur's Gate is 12, and the reason because I think the max level in 5th edition D&D is 20.
Yeah.
But the level, because again it is a game with paper and pens and dice and your imagination, you can do some really stupid crazy stuff in D&D 5th edition when you start getting to level 15, 16, 17. So they were like, we just literally can't introduce these spells into this system and make them feel like they would be in the book. Sure. Without breaking the entire system. Mm-hmm. Or watering down the spells. And at that point, it's like, why even have the spells if you're going to have them watered down and crappy?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why they capped it at 12. And also, looking at Divinity Original Sin 2, they add stuff into the game, but they don't add stuff past the conclusion.
Okay.
For all their DLC. So they added, like, the Talk to Animals thing. That was like an extra thing that was added to Divinity Original Sin 2. So it's like, oh, now you can go back through and play the game, but you can talk to every single animal. And it's like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing to do.
Okay.
They also added a DM mode to Divinity Original Sin 2, which is cool, where one person could be the dungeon master and create a dungeon grid and scenarios and stuff.
Okay.
So I could see them doing stuff like that, but I feel like they're gonna kind of keep the conclusion. Oh, and they already did add an epilogue,
Oh, okay.
which is I forget how long they said the epilogue was. I can't imagine it's like too terribly long,
Sure.
but apparently it like combines a lot of the actions that you did in the game.
Okay.
Um, Kind of sums it up really well at the end. So I feel like they're gonna do stuff like that and maybe
Sure.
more add more stuff into the game instead of adding like a DLC to it.
Okay. Well, that's cool. That's cool. Um, crap. I had something I forgot. Is there a class or class and race that you find yourself you're like, that doesn't really sound interesting to play as?
Ooh, I don't think I could play as a half orc.
Okay.
I just not me. Or a dwarf really. I guess melee characters I'm not really.
All right.
um that's pretty much it really. I'm kind of excited to try all the different things. I really want to try Ranger has always been kind of one of my favorite classes.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a bow person, you get an animal and stuff.
Yep.
But they also have always sucked in D&D and like stats wise.
Sure.
And they especially suck in 5th edition, and I've heard that they haven't really fixed it in Baldur's Gate 3, so it's still one of the weakest classes. So that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
I would love to play a ranger and not feel like in Divinity Original Sin 2, they had well, they didn't really have classes, but you could make a magic archerer, and I thought that was the coolest shit ever. So like, I wish you could do more stuff like that. Like, give me a magic ranger character would be very cool.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. I think that's all I got for Baldur's Gate. TJ, anything you want to add to wrap up on Baldur's?
No, I'm glad you're gonna play it some more. That's cool. And this is gonna sound unfortunate because I know you said you hated Mass Effect for this reason. But
yeah.
You gotta talk to everybody.
I know.
I just want to say, you know, like that one strip you walked through, there's the people fighting on the left. You had that one person that Lizelle yelled at on the right, and then you went ahead to the prison thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Along that strip, you had a companion you could have gotten. There was a shopkeeper, an item keeper. There was a bunch of just different small stuff like the character interactions, like was Lizelle. There was 2 quests. There was a thing broken into. There's like so much just in that small area.
Right.
So it's definitely yeah, I don't know. It is a lot because it's like with the Grove, I think there's probably like 30 or 40 NPCs in there probably. Maybe not. Maybe it's like 20.
Okay.
But like all of them they have something to say, even if it's just a small character moment. But a lot of them have stuff that will give you hints about other things in the world or quests or items and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like one of the person had PTSD, was a songwriter, help her out, and then like you might hear songs later on and stuff. So it's like cool stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the intimidating thing I'm finding about this game. Like, just the paths of like, okay, I went into this one area and there's 4 different paths. Which way do I go? And then to have that layer of talking to everybody is just a lot of stuff going on, which I mean is good, but yeah, intimidating because it's just like, where do I go? Obviously, as you know, and if you watch the stream, you guys know, I'm heading to the druids to be like, okay, can we get the tieflings, a better home or keep them around? And I'm over somewhere in the fucking wilderness, nowhere near them. I just went the wrong way. So it's gonna...
that is the right way. That is the right way for sure. But, yeah, I don't know. I think I was gonna say. Moving on.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to more to Baldur's Gate. And, yeah, viewers, if you guys have jumped into Baldur's Gate, let us know what kind of characters you created, what your adventure is looking like, and hopefully you're having a great time with, like TJ mentioned earlier, Game of the Year for a lot of people. But, yeah. So, let's jump over to topic 2, taking a break from games. Let's talk about comics. Let's talk about fun stuff there. So, yeah, TJ and I have connected for a while on, comic stuff, obviously with the MCU and the DC movies and video games, stuff like that. But I've never actually picked your brain, TJ, on how you got into all this stuff. So, yeah, figured I would kind of talk about that now. So, yeah, TJ, what got you not necessarily into comics to start, but what got you into, what was your entry point for like the superhero universe and stuff like that?
Honestly, I mean, probably a lot of kids my age was movies.
Mm.
Obviously, you had like the X-Men movie and Spider-Man and stuff, and that was coming out. I think X-Men came out in 2000.
Yeah.
So I'm like 7 years old. Like that's kind of, you're right in the wheelhouse. You watch a superhero movie when you're 7 years old, you're probably going to be awestruck a little bit. Um, I do remember as well the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I went with my dad and our next door neighbor randomly, and we showed up late because of my neighbor, and I was so mad. And we went in, and there was like no seats because it was like opening weekend of Spider-Man, and the only seats we could get was the very front row.
Oh.
It's the only time I've sat front row in a movie. But I have no idea how old I am when that movie came out. But let's just say I'm 10 years old, and you're in the front row. The movie screen might as well be the whole world, because that's all you can see, like your peripheral. So I'm seeing Spider-Man, those awesome shots where he's like swinging through the city and stuff, and I'm like, I feel like I'm swinging through the city. Like, it was awesome. So definitely after that, that really got me into it. And then right around that same time, I remember my fourth grade class with Mrs. Black's class. We would get comic books and trade them in class and like at recess and stuff. And I want to say it was like the dollar store or something, but there was just like, you could get some really crappy comic books in like a pack of 3 for like $1. And we would go through and pull out the good ones and trade them and sell them and stuff like that. I think that's where I found like Deathlock was in those kind of comics. It was kind of like those kind of 90s guys that fell off were kind of in these comic packs. So we would trade them. And then on the more serious side of that, once I got into trading them and stuff, and my parents noticed that I had comic books, whenever I would be hospitalized with my asthma as a kid, my dad would go to Heroes Aren't Hard to Find in Charlotte, North Carolina, the comic book store.
Oh.
And he would buy me some new comics, which I think at the time was there was a Batman and Superman run where they were together.
Okay.
Had a cool logo. So he would buy me the newest issue of that with the glossy pages, and I would get into it. So I was kind of reading comic books in the hospital bed and trading them in fourth grade class probably.
Okay. What were characters you were finding yourself relating to or really diving into once you were delving into these comics or going from the movie standpoint?
But definitely Spider-Man. I forget who. I had a couple of like family friends who gave me like a bunch of older comic books.
Okay.
But somebody gave me, they were reprints, I'm pretty sure, so they were worthless, but they were the first Spider-Man runs, like reprints of them on like really thin, crappy reprinting. But man, those were the absolute best. Reading the original like 60s Spider-Man, especially as a kid, he's like going to high school and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to read through that. And then also, and because of the movie, I was inspired by Spider-Man, obviously. But then also the Flash.
Okay.
I really liked the Flash. He was my favorite for a while. Like I read, I want to say it was a novel, actually. It wasn't even a comic, but there was a novel where the Flash's girlfriend is coming over for their anniversary, and he forgot because he was fighting Gorilla Grodd. And he's like standing in his Flash costume, and she knocks on the door, and then he has like the internal bubble where he's like, oh, it's our anniversary. So while he goes, come in, and while she's opening the door, he cleans his apartment, he takes a shower, he makes dinner, and then he goes and gets a present and comes back and sets it on the table, like all while it took her to open the door. And I was like, that's the coolest hero of all time.
Okay, just because I can't wipe it from my mind. Just a tangent. You're not going to have an answer. How do you shower?
How did the shower
fast?
Yes. Also, I should have. He made dinner, by the way, like, in the oven.
Okay.
And all I'm gonna say to that is Speed Force.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all you need to know.
Fair enough.
I don't know what the Speed Force is or how it works or what it does, but Speed Force, baby, that's what happens.
Oh boy! All right. So after these initial, inspirations, or rather the, characters you connected with the Flash, with Spider-Man, what was your next level of like, this is something I'm invested in? What was the next step in like intrigue and like things that caught your attention?
I think it was actually uh, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1, probably.
Hell yeah.
I My parents bought me a Wii when I was in 8th grade, not because of Wii Sports or Super Smash Bros. Or something. I got a Wii so I could play Ultimate Alliance because
Mhm.
I had a GameCube and I was playing X-Men Legends, and they were like, "We're not going to put Ultimate Alliance on the GameCube. We're only putting it on the Wii." And I was like, "What?" So, which I'm still mad about to this day because the GameCube absolutely can handle that game,
Yeah.
but that's neither here nor there. Especially since the Wii is just like two GameCube RAMs duct taped together on the inside. But yeah, so it was that game. I played that game religiously when it came out, like the summer in between 8th grade and 9th grade. And man, that game, the storyline to that game, as you know, is like it's an original story, but they pull in a lot of elements from a lot of the different corners of the Marvel universe that I had not been exposed to before.
Yep.
So learning about like the Scree and the Muonic Inducer and Galactus and all that stuff, and I'm like, this is really cool. It led me to go on and investigate a lot more on my own,
Hmm.
especially some of the characters. Like I didn't know who Moon Knight was when I was playing that game. I didn't know who some of these characters were, or I didn't know as much about them as I thought. So I would go back. I'm like, I didn't know who Doctor Strange was, but I'm like, oh, he's got like little purple, blast. That's pretty cool. And, you look into it and you kind of learn. I feel like that game honestly is great at like world building
Yep.
because you kind of get highlights of a lot of different things throughout the universe, and you can kind of go in and fill it in on your own time.
Definitely. Yeah, it seems like we shared a lot of different, similar pathing. I would say the '90s Fox cartoons were probably my big entry point, like the Spider-Man and X-Men shows. Like I remember that being the first place I saw Iron Man and being like, "Oh, it's a cool robot," and not realizing obviously it's a dude in the suit and all that jazz. Um, but that and the action figures, and then like you mentioned, the X-Men Legends and the Ultimate Alliance, I agree wholeheartedly. Like those games just expanded um, the little knowledge I did have to just be like, oh, there's all these other characters that are really cool. And I appreciated what those games did with like X-Men Legends. You could get the different costumes, but then you had like those side missions you could do in Cerebro, right? No, not Cerebro. I'm sorry, the Danger Room, and you
Yeah,
could
the
get like
comic book missions.
yes, thank you, and you could get the little backstories there. And then Ultimate Alliance, I feel like they did something similar. Maybe I'm mistaken, but they
Oh,
all.
sorry. I think the Ultimate Alliance was the comic book missions.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. They had those, and like you said, they just had this wide breadth of like characters from villains and heroes that like I had no idea. Like I remember seeing Winter Soldier there for the first time, not
Yep.
learning
Yeah.
about him, but I'm like, oh, you're just some jabroni, some jobber, and then seeing and learning eventually, which we'll probably talk about the MCU, being like, oh my god, like that's so cool, and he was just this guy in this game. It was just there, being like, man, I have a gun.
Yep.
It's just,
And
it's
also
crazy.
those comic book missions in Ultimate Alliance, um, the one for Captain America, it was like one for each character,
Yep.
and you would unlock a special costume which had special stats if you did that.
Hmm.
And you had to find the comic book to begin with
Yep.
in the level. But the one for Captain America it wasn't just like a random mission. They retold comic book stories in
Mm.
those missions.
Mm.
And the one for Captain America was the Winter Soldier, obviously to
Ah.
reuse the asset of the boss fight from the
Sure.
first act. But still, they went through and actually told the story of the Winter Soldier. I remember playing through in this little isometric Diablo style game the drama of you know, Captain America figuring out that it was Bucky for the first time and stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
And so that's that kind of stuff, like filling you on like legitimate actual comic book lore, was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, game wise, those ones definitely stood out. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Like, just all the bright lights and obviously the shiny stuff in there. I've talked about it many times on the podcast, but dad humoring me and playing with that with me in the arcades, just mashing the buttons and playing as Spider-Man and Captain America and I think
Did you take him
Wolverine.
for a ride?
Of course. But seeing that roster too, like Venom being introduced to him there along with the 90s cartoon, just was crazy. So you mentioned Spider-Man, you mentioned Flash, and then you mentioned Moon Knight. So, what has your history like? Are you still invested in these three characters, or have you kind of moved on to other ones as you've gone on?
I just haven't really been reading comic books, like the
Sure.
actual comic books, as of late. But I'm still invested in those characters as far as like the MCU and stuff go. Like I was very excited when the Moon Knight show came out.
Yep.
I was very pleasantly surprised with a lot of it, and I had critiques of other parts of it. But yeah, so anytime the characters are mentioned in any other universes, like video games and stuff like that, I'll always tune in. But as far as like reading the comic book series, probably not,
Sure.
especially because like Captain America, for example, was another superhero I got really invested into at the time because of Ultimate Alliance.
Hmm.
But like, I'm not gonna keep up with the Captain America comic books. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's like two series, going on at the same time. Always, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's definitely a lot, and I find that's a difficult jumping in point for anybody. It's like, where do I start? And I'm sure there's people definitely more knowledgeable than us and are like, oh, you can do this, like have an easy path. But I found that something always difficult for me to do. Shout out to Mile High Comics, which I went to recently, but like that place is huge, as you've seen through photos. Like whenever I go to a shop like that, I'm always trying to find like the graphic novels, I guess is what you would call them, where it's a more compiled story beat, like point to point. It when it comes to issue, it's crazy to think of how people keep up with all of it, if that makes sense.
It has to be subscription. That's the only way you can do it, really.
Sure.
Like you have to be subscribed to the relevant comics to just have them every month. Otherwise, you'll never keep up with it. There's no way.
Sure. Yeah, I think the
Um,
closest, sorry, real quick, the closest I had to like week to week was when they did their second Secret Wars event. Like they had mini runs of like, oh, Spider Gwen and her story, which thank God, because now I love Spider Gwen stuff. She had a little part. They had like Baby Avengers versus X-Men I was really into. They had like a 2099 universe I was into, but it was like 5 issues, and I'm like, this is perfect. Just give me this.
yeah, I think I mean, you're saying you're reading the graphic novels. I feel like always for the big Marvel events, that's how I would consume them. Is I would just get the kind of overview.
Yep.
Where like I remember the Civil War when that was going on. Like I just read the big Civil War compilation,
Mm-hmm.
and yet there were things that I was confused on, like that they didn't fill in. Like why is Thor an android?
Yep.
Like some weird stuff like that. Like why is this character expelled or whatever? Why is Spider-Man acting like this? But ultimately, you still do get the major points of the story, and it's still pretty satisfying to read. So I would kind of do that instead of the individual ones for the
Sure.
most part.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's been a few that have been standouts, like you mentioned, the Civil War one. Over on the DC side of things, my buddy Nolan let me borrow. I think it's The Long Halloween. There's like 3 of them, but those are fantastic. Um, but yeah, it's tricky because it's like, yeah, you don't know where to jump in, and then if it is those graphic novels, there's always those hidden pieces where it's like, I don't feel like I'm getting the full story here, but you try and piece it together. It's interesting.
That's probably why Moon Knight accelerated to become one of my favorite characters. Besides the fact that he's just a bad bitch, it's that all of his comic series, for better or worse, were pretty short, except
Hmm.
for the '80s one.
Okay,
So I think Ultimate Alliance came out in 2006. Correct me if I'm wrong,
I'll look it up.
but uh, there was also, coincidentally, a 2006 Moon Knight series, which is still my favorite Moon Knight series. Um, that's the craziest one where it's like his powers wax and wane with the moon, and he was a mercenary. Like, he rips a dude's face off in the first comic book, in the first series and stuff. Very weird. That's the first one where they're like, oh no, he doesn't have multiple secret identities to gain an advantage. He has multiple personality disorder. He's crazy.
Hmm.
His mind is gone. So that was, I think it was like 20 or 30 issues, maybe. Didn't last for that long. But that was like playing Ultimate Alliance. I was like, let me look into Moon Knight. I would like to read a Moon Knight comic.
Hmm.
And then that was the series that I read immediately afterwards, and it was very contained. Moon Knight wasn't going to hang out with Luke Cage and shit. Nobody wants to hang out with Moon Knight, so It was very easily digestible, and you just kind of don't get that unless you choose an obscure ass character. You're not going to get that really.
Sure. You were correct with 2006, a nice job there. So yeah, so from the games, then going into the movies, do you feel that this has helped your excitement for comics or kept it the same?
Yeah, I feel like actually, I kind of wish I didn't read the comic books,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest with you, a lot of times because I think Captain America: Civil War is a perfect example. That movie is awesome.
Yeah.
The movie kicks ass. There's giant man's fighting, Black Panther's crawling up his legs, and Spider-Man swinging around. It's a childhood dream. It's awesome. But because I read the comic books, I'm like, well, it's not as cool. It's like 300 superheroes fighting all at the same time,
Sure,
like in
sure.
in the New York City streets. Like, there's always kind of that little. I'm like, well, it's not as cool. Like, there's always that little extra layer. Like when I'm watching an MCU movie, I'm like, it's just not quite what I want to say. It's not all the way there because they are still trying to toe that line of being commercially successful and accessible to everybody.
Yep.
And I get that. If they didn't do that, they wouldn't have been successful to begin with. So like, I wouldn't have Captain America and Avengers trilogy to watch if maybe they did it my style and made the Captain America movie a really gritty World War II. Like I don't think that they would make a bunch of them. So I wouldn't get all the movies that I love. So it is a give and take where it's like I'm glad the movies do what they do so that they can be successful. But at the same time, almost every time I'm watching a Marvel movie or a DC movie for that matter, I'm like, they just almost get to comic book level and then they don't. The only
Okay.
exception is like some of the big movies, obviously, like Avengers Infinity War. That's a comic book level movie. Like that's things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um so yeah, I feel like that's kind of where I'm coming at from that is like the comic books kind of did. It's kind of like reading the book before you watch the movie. Like you're gonna be slightly disappointed even if it's the best book ever or the best movie ever. I mean,
Sure. So we talked a lot about Marvel. So going back to the Flash, is there anybody DC wise who you've connected with other than the Flash?
to be honest with you, not really.
Okay.
Really,
All right, that's fair.
it's just the Flash. Just trying to think of there was somebody else that I really liked. They were in the
Injustice.
fighting game. Yeah,
Injustice.
they were in Injustice 2.
Okay.
Um,
Blue Beetle.
trying to Blue Beetle, yes, but
Firestorm.
also yes, it was
Oh,
Firestorm.
okay. All right.
That was his friend. I was gonna say like I didn't know who Firestorm was. I played Injustice maybe like a year ago,
Sure.
like by myself, and I was like, who is Firestorm? So I looked him up. I'm like, this guy's pretty cool. I
Mhm.
like Firestorm and I like Blue Beetle, because isn't Firestorm there's like a scientist in his head or something?
Yeah, it's two different individuals like morphed together or fused, and they can split and divide. But if they need to use the Firestorm powers, then they have to fusion hot dance or something like that.
Yeah, that's sick. I like him. I also, like I said, I like the Flash. But otherwise, yeah, I just really don't really mess with DC too much. I like their movie. Who doesn't like Batman? Obviously, everybody likes Batman. And I like their Batman movies. I like their that Suicide Squad movie was really good. I'm excited for Joker Folie à Deux or whatever the hell the sequel is called
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
Lady Gaga.
Yep. It's Harley.
Yeah, she was that movie A Star Is Born with her is incredible. She's an incredible actress and singer, obviously. So I'm excited for Lady Gaga for that. But otherwise, yeah, as far as like the comic books go, not really. It was just
Yeah.
a Flash. A couple of my friends tried to get me to read God, something Night. Say it was a lantern
Oh, like
event.
Night Corps, Night Corps, Night
Might
Black
have
Knight,
been
Blackest Night.
Blackest Night. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Blackest Night.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, you know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I read a little bit of Blackest Night, but I never finished it. It just
Gotcha.
wasn't really. I don't really like how DC like 90% of things in DC. It's all about gods and myths,
Mm-hmm.
and I more prefer getting bit by a radioactive spider for my kind of hero. That's kind of my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not a big deal either way.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever
Did you see
delve?
the Flash movie?
No, I still need to. Like, I was excited for it, and then all the Ezra stuff came out, and I was like, "Ugh." But no, I'll watch it eventually on HBO.
I I didn't expect. I loved it.
Okay.
I didn't expect to. I loved it. They did they showed how he got his powers, and
Hmm.
it was pretty accurate to what I remember.
Okay.
Also, they had the stupid costume in the ring thing from the original comics
Oh,
that I
did
adored.
they? Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, it's not as dumb as a spandex suit like expanding out of
Yeah.
his ring, but
Hmm.
it's still pretty dumb, so I like it.
All right. All right. Did you get into any like independent comics outside of the big two, Dark Horse or the Turtles or Spawn or anything like that?
Not really. I had a bunch of those comics from those like crappy 3 packs I was talking
Yep.
about where we would trade them. I think I had a bunch of those like kind of offbeat, independent, gritty 90s. They're always hyper violent, the
Oh yeah.
90s comics. But yeah, I never really got into Spawn or anything
Hmm.
like that. I
Sure.
never really got into any of the McFarlane verse per se.
Hmm. Hmm.
What about yourself? Did you ever?
No, I think like we talked about like the games being the biggest, well, games and movies being the biggest avenues of like opening up my knowledge to this. Like I always knew of Spawn, but like never seemed up my alley, and like Hellboy, but like once Hellboy was in Injustice 2, obviously the Hellboy movies, and then Spawn being in Mortal Kombat 11. Yeah. Like, that was like, oh, these guys look really cool. Did I delve farther than what the game had to offer? No, not really. But um, that was probably my extent with them. And then, like, the Turtles, I always knew, obviously, from the show, or once again, the early games, but, like, didn't realize they were a comic at first. So that's kind of intriguing. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
never
dark
went to
comic at
venture.
that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like I've heard they have a really good I don't know if it's a graphic novel, but like short story, like was it The Last Ronin, something like that for the Turtles. That sounds like an
Yes,
intriguing read, but I haven't gotten it yet.
they're making a game off of that actually as
Are
well.
they? Ooh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and you're gonna be able to use all four of the turtles' weapons and stuff because
So
you're the last
I
one.
know a little bit of the story, and it seems like that's based off. Like, do you know anything about that story?
Now I know literally the cliff notes of like all the turtles get killed except for one turtle.
Yeah, so that turtle, whoever it is, I don't know. Yeah, he kind of adopts the other weapons to homage them. So yeah, that makes sense that they would have it in the game, all four of them. So that's cool. All right.
Yeah, that would be a sick game. I
Yeah.
hear they're going for like a God of War style game is
Oh, okay. All
what
right.
I heard. So
That'd be neat. So we talked a lot about heroes. Were there any villains that you resonated or connected with?
Doctor Doom.
Hmm. Okay.
Doctor Doom was really cool. He's very stupid, but he's very cool.
All right.
I did read a lot of the because of the 60s Spider-Man stuff that ended up going into a lot of the 60s Fantastic Four stuff.
Hmm.
Spider-Man was very involved with the Fantastic Four. He wanted to become a member of the Fantastic Four at one point. That was a whole arc and shit. So, uh, yeah, read a lot of Doctor Doom there. Also, the Green Goblin was cool, but I feel like I just liked Willem Dafoe's portrayal of him in the Spider-Man movie.
Sure.
I think that's just what I was obsessed with. And also Venom is just cool. Like he's Venom.
Yeah, definitely. Nice.
I mean, yeah, as I got older, I feel like I liked the villains a little bit more. Like you start to become a teenager and you actually learn world history a little bit. And you're like, okay, Magneto, that's actually pretty cool. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I forget which X-Men movie it is where he's like hunting ex-Nazis in Argentina.
Origins.
That
Wait,
was,
no.
oh, that
No,
was
first class. First class. Sorry,
first
first
class.
class.
First class. That was it. Yeah. And they're I was like, what is the what's the problem here?
Right, yeah.
They're trying to show him like he's like a bad guy. I'm like, they are Nazis though. So,
Yeah.
hashtag Magneto did nothing wrong.
To a point. To a point.
Okay, in that opening sequence, that's it though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
After that, yeah, no Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Okay, I guess last question I have, just because we were talking about the movies. Do you have a favorite movie moment with a hero? or villain, character moment.
Favorite movie moment. Oh, okay, that's Spider-Man. Far From Home.
Mm-hmm.
The sequence when Mysterio gets to do Mysterio things.
Yep.
Finally, he like does the imagery things and like makes Spider-Man think that he's fighting someone, no one's there, and he hits a Spider-Man, doesn't he hit himself in the head or something?
He gets hit by a fucking bus.
Yeah, so he gets hit by a bus and stuff. Yeah, he like used the illusion to beat him up, and
Yeah.
I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my whole life, and
Yeah.
all I ever wanted, and I almost cried. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
That one was definitely amazing. The one that went straight to my head is the opening of X2, the Nightcrawler sequence in the
Oh God,
the
yes.
present. Yeah. Holy shit.
Nightcrawler's still my favorite mutant because of that scene, probably.
Yeah.
That scene and the scene
Ultimate
in,
Alliance
Ultimate
scene.
Alliance.
Yeah. And you're like, I don't even get to play as him. Come on.
Yeah, and he picks those swords off the
Yep.
wall. And like, oh, come on.
Yep.
Yeah, very cool. I also like the scene in X. Honestly, just the entire movie of X2. That's the scene that I like the most.
Okay.
But, that intro, you have the Nightcrawler scene, which is a banger, obviously, and then right after that, you have Stryker, his task force, attacking the X Mansion, and you have Wolverine defending the X Mansion from a bunch of Spec Op guys. It's so sick.
And then you get Colossus showing up, and he's like, I can help. And no, Wolverine's like, no. And you're like, what do you mean, no?
Yeah.
Get him in there.
Like, no, I got it. Yeah, that was a weird Colossus. We won't talk about that. Listen, not everything.
Oh, you just didn't like the shininess? It was fine. I was fine with it.
Does actual Colossus, can he shift back and forth? I thought he was just always metal.
No, I believe he's always metal. I think that's something they changed. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that part. That was weird.
Fair.
He puts the shield on. Yeah.
Sure. All right, fair enough. Nice. All right, a little fun comic memory lane talk. All right, it's the big one. Jumping into topic 3, let's talk about Elden Ring. TJ, what do you want to talk about? Where do you want to start with Elden Ring?
Oh God. Well, much like Elden Ring itself, I have no idea where to start.
All right.
There's
So
a lot.
let's start with the big one. How much time have you put in Elden Ring?
That is a good question, actually. Let me pull up
Sure.
my Steam page. Let's see. Okay, according to Steam, I have put in 593.7 hours.
Wow. Okay. Dang.
Honestly, lower than I thought.
Okay. So, with Elden Ring, what's your experience with the other Soulsborne type games? Like, have you played Dark Souls? Have you played Bloodborne, Sekiro, etc.? Or was this your first delve into it?
So I played Dark Souls 1 back when before Dark Souls 2 had even come out, and I didn't get very far. I got pretty frustrated, and then I kept banging my head against the wall, and I just like looked up stuff on the internet and cheesed my way through it basically with the Pyromancer, because you can break the first Dark Souls game. You can break pretty easily, so it wasn't like I did it because I had knowledge of the game or anything. I was just like, oh, if I put all the points into this spell, I can auto win. So that was kind of what I did with Dark Souls 1. Didn't play Dark Souls 2 at all. When Bloodborne came out, I played that. I loved Bloodborne. It was really fun, but I gave up on it about halfway. I never finished it.
Okay.
There's kind of that moment in a Souls game where you hit a wall, and you either got to get good or completely rechange your tactics. And I was not willing to do either of those things in Bloodborne. Like, I just kind of gave up. That's kind of most games. I feel like you kind of get to that. I'm like, I'm just not willing to spend another 5 hours of like just figuring out what to do, like what weapons or whatever. So Elden Ring was the first one that I actually was able to finish. I hit that wall. I stuck with it.
Okay.
And now I've gone back through and I played Dark Souls 3 within the last 3 months. That's a fantastic game. I beat that. I'm playing through Dark Souls 2 right now, which is a bit more janky. They didn't smooth things out very well. like with the power stancing and stuff, but still pretty fun. I still intend to beat it with my dual wielding sword stuff, so I can say I've beaten every Souls game with a two-handing sword, like two one-handed swords.
Okay. Nice. So what was it with Elden Ring that kind of caught your attention a little bit more, or interest more than the others?
I think one is the combat. Like it is so fluid and smooth in Elden Ring. Like the animations and everything, like even with a bunch of craziness going on, everything, the particle effects, everything, it's always, I don't know, I always feel like it just works really well. Like it's very crunchy. And so it's very satisfying combat combined with the fact that it was so open.
Mm-hmm.
Because how far did you get in Elden Ring when you played it?
So the point
did you go to Stormvale Castle?
So I don't know names. So there was two bosses I was dealing with. There was this lion thing on the coast after one castle ruin area by the beach. So there was that.
Castle Mord.
Okay. And then the big boss, which I've been told is the first big one. The like older gentleman, I don't know if it's Godfried, something like that. He like jumps really high in the air a bunch and does
he have a cane and he's got like golden knives he throws at you?
Probably. Maybe I'll look it up. But I remember you fight him like on a castle wall.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, he's got some like astral hammer or some shit.
Okay. He only had 2 arms though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good.
So yeah, I thought
I'm blanking on his name right now.
Is it Godfrey?
No, it is Morgott.
Oh, okay. Well, so I got him down to like halfway a few times, and then I was like, all right.
So he is not actually the first boss.
He's not. Is it the stupid horse thing? I avoid the fuck out of the horse.
No. These are all mini bosses. You do have to fight Morgott to get to the first main. When I say main boss, I mean a great rune holder.
Jesus.
A holder of the great shard.
Okay.
You like a main boss.
Okay.
That's at the end of that castle. So when you fought Margit, that's like going into Stormvale Castle, and then you get all the way to the end of Stormvale Castle, and then you got to fight the Grafted. I can't think of his name because all the G's and stuff, but
okay,
that guy's got like 15 arms, so that's what I was asking.
Yeah, he looks familiar, but the area these pictures are in doesn't look familiar, so I'm confused. But the name sounds right.
I'm gonna get the names wrong because here's the thing about Elden Ring: a lot of people know that it was written by George R. R. Martin.
Yep.
The universe for it. What they don't know is that all of the important characters and gods and goddesses, their names either start with a G, an R, or an M.
Right.
George R. R. Martin.
Yeah.
And so, because there's only 3 letters, and there's like 9 characters, there's like Ronnie, Renalia. It's like, okay, dude. It's like Melania, fucking.
Yep.
Morgott, Margit. Fuck.
But, yeah, it must have been this guy. But yeah, he was the first big one I got to, and then there was that lion boss that I also got stuck on.
Yeah, Castle Morgan. That's just like an optional fun little side area
for sure.
You can do. I say fun, as meanwhile you're like, I'm getting stabbed. So when I played it for the first time, I went straight to the castle like a genius.
Okay.
'Cause I was like, I played Dark Souls, and I fought Morgott, one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
Which is sad. He's my favorite character, so it's sad that I don't know his name, but he destroyed me. He threw the golden light hammer at me.
Yep.
And so I was like, fuck this. I went back out. There's actually, the road forks off. There's like you can go right or you can go straight to the castle. So I went to the right, and I found a pathway that actually led me around the back of the castle. So you can actually skip the castle sequence entirely and just go to the next area.
Oh, okay.
So I went to the next area, which is you're not supposed to do supposed to, but like the normal sequence of events would have you not doing that. And I was like, this is really cool. The enemies were a little bit too tough for me, obviously, but I was able to like grind there and then come back. So I think that's kind of why I decided to stick with it, because I'm like, this game feels like it was made to be sequence broken and not cheese, but like played towards your advantage.
Hmm.
Like if you get stuck on a boss like that, just like go fight a different boss or go get a different weapon.
Yeah, which I'll definitely agree. That was a bigger appeal with this in compared to other ones. Like, obviously, my experience is much more limited than yours. Like, I played a little bit of Bloodborne. Sekiro was probably the farthest I made it. And then I did play a little bit of the remastered Dark Souls 1 just because it came with my PS5 when I got it. But I did enjoy that in Elden Ring where it's open enough. Well, the open world, duh. Where, yeah, like you said, if you're getting stuck, go somewhere else, explore, figure it out. Like, the other games, at least in comparison, it's very streamlined, or there's not a lot of leeway of like where you can go. So I definitely appreciated that in this one when I was playing it.
Well, that and like, even if Elden Ring was as closed off and like linear as like Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3,
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like it's twice as open just in its combat system.
Okay.
Like, especially now that I'm going back to play Dark Souls 2 right now, like, oh my God, the hurdles you have to jump over just to make basic shit works that automatically works in Dark Souls, sorry, in Elden Ring.
Mm.
Like in Elden Ring, if you have a katana in one hand and you equip a katana in your other hand, congratulations. L1 now does dual wielding katana attacks
Mm.
specifically. You can still attack with the swords independently, but if you press L1 specifically, you'll attack with both weapons.
Okay.
In Dark Souls 2, you have to find a weapon of the same type, so the two katanas or whatever. Then you got to check your stats and make sure that you have 150% of the requirements to be able to power stance. Once you make sure you have enough requirements, then you go into the power stance. What you want to do is you want to hold Y. Okay, don't tap Y. If you tap Y, you will two-hand your weapon. You want to hold Y. You will see the sword in your left hand raised slightly. That's how you know you're in power stance mode. Now, when you're in power stance mode, you cannot use both weapon attacks, and also the amount of stamina it requires to do a power stance attack is like if you were swinging both weapons anyway, whereas in Elden Ring it is like 1.5 times as much stamina instead of 200% times more stamina. So anyway, just small things like that.
Sure.
It's just so much more streamlined, all the way you do your weapons. Oh my God, the weapons of Elden Ring. Like every single how much have you played like Souls games? Like, do you know about like the trying to get your stats to align with weapons and stuff? Or
I've never looked into it that like in depth. It's just been more like I think this is what I'll use or what I like. I've never gone in depth with like stats and stuff like that. It's always like, oh, health, duh. That's what I want because I'm getting punched. So I wouldn't say I've looked into details like that.
okay, in Souls games usually you want to choose one, maybe two if you know what you're doing. Primary stats.
Okay.
So you're like, I'm going to be a dexterity character. I'm going to put the majority of my damage dealing level ups into dexterity, or I'm going to be a strength character or an intelligence, whatever. The problem with that though is obviously weapons, they have a scaling in the game based off of letters like A through D.
Okay.
The higher towards A, like A being the strongest weapon scaling. So if you have 20 dexterity and 10 strength, you want to find a sword that has A or B dexterity scaling and then C or D strength scaling.
Okay.
So it'll rely on that stat less. That locks you out of a lot of weapons, obviously.
Mm.
If you're putting your points into dexterity, you can't use heavy swords and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have enough strength for it. In Elden Ring, not only can you respec, so you can just change your stats if you want to use a different weapon, although that is limited. You can only do it maybe like 15 to 20 times a run, I would say. In Elden Ring, every single weapon you can take to the blacksmith and change it so that those weapon grading scales match your stats. Like you can take a hammer, instead of it being like an A scaling for strength and a D scaling for dexterity, you can take and flip that and have it be a D scaling for strength and A for dexterity. It's very cool. That does coincide with the weapon art itself, though, also changing. So like the L2 attack, basically. But yeah, just being able to use any weapon with any character by being able to swap around the stats like that is just absolutely mind-blowing. And that's part of the reason I have almost 600 hours in, is because like I've only used like half the weapons. Like it's still, and using a different weapon in a Souls-like game is basically a completely different game because you're going to change how you're, you know, pacing and dodging and defending and how you're attacking. Like, you have to relearn everything. So it's yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Dang. Yeah, that's nice to have that freedom and not just be pigeonholed into a path.
Yeah.
So how did you think the story, or what did you think of the story overall in Elden Ring? Like, did you find it was easy to come by, or it was one of those things you had to kind of look out for, keep an ear to the ground? Like, I know sometimes you kind of have to dig for the lore, it seems, in these types of games.
Oh, you absolutely have to dig for the lore in Elden Ring, but for the first time, I actually gave a shit to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I actually found the item description pages on the weapons and items, which I hadn't done in previous games, and I
Sure.
actually went through and read. And I was like, oh, okay, this sword is for this and stuff. Um, and I don't know, I did enjoy the story more only because it feels like a whole world this time
Yep.
instead of like a little area in Dark Souls. And so they're like it does have a whole it's not even just like a history of like what just happened to make the lands between be this kind of like decrepit, like almost post-apocalyptic fantasy setting.
Hmm.
It also has like thousands of years of history.
Oh, wow.
Like, if you go back, you know, like the golden tree in the
Yeah.
middle of the, okay, that's like the main religion and like the main issue going on in the
Okay.
world. But it's like in the lore of Elden Ring, like you learn, it's like, oh yeah, before the giant tree was here, before the two fingers and their guidance, there was another, like the world was uh ruled by trolls. There's these giant trolls, and you can actually find there's a land of these giants and trolls, and there's like giant heads, like giant skulls and stuff where they used to lead. And it's like, oh, before they ruled the lands between dragons, there was a dragon lord who had like 6 heads, Plasutis, and he shoots lightning out of his face and stuff. He's super sick, and there's a bunch of dragons everywhere, and you can still find like the crumbling dragon empire scattered throughout Elden Ring.
Oh, okay.
You also do get to fight Plasutis, which is the best boss fight ever.
Okay.
So yeah, so kind of that made it feel more realistic, I think, than other previous games where I'm like, there's like ages and like lots of history in this world that makes it feel more lived in. Because there's also, it's not just that history, but it's like certain groups of enemies. It's like this group, these are called the Godskin Peelers or whatever, the Godskin Nobles. Like this group of people, they used to worship these gods like 10,000 years ago, and also, you know, they do this, and you have like this group over here, and they all have their own history and things that feels, I don't know, it just feels natural. It doesn't feel like it's like forced into the game at all. Like it just kind of feels like it's happening, it's existed, it's always existed. Like I feel like I'm kind of observing, like looking into this fully realized world.
Hmm.
I don't know.
That's cool. Yeah, the depth that they have in there. That's neat. So you talked about bosses a little bit. What were some of your favorite boss fights, and who were some of your most difficult boss fights?
Plasutis probably fits both, but
Okay.
he is I'm gonna describe him to you, Brett, and it's not gonna do him justice at all
Okay.
because I want to say he's a 5 or 4 headed dragon, but this is like 10,000 years after he's been dead.
Okay.
You actually have to rewind time. He exists in a pocket outside of time. You
Okay.
have to rewind time to get it so the pocket dimension is like exactly right before he dies.
Okay.
And he's a giant zombie dragon. Like his skin is like falling apart. You see his skeleton and stuff. He's a giant like 4 headed zombie dragon, and like 1 or 2 of the heads has fallen off. They've been decapitated, so he's got like decapitated heads, and he's got skeleton stuff everywhere. He's the coolest person ever. But yeah, you find him in this like outside of time arena. And it's very cool. It's a big arena. It's very hard to do because he's a massive dragon, so he can just like take up and fly off into the air, or shoot King Ghidorah beams at you,
Okay.
like with the I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, so he's really cool. And the toughest boss fight, he was the coolest. The toughest boss fight is obviously Melania. She's just ridiculous. I have yet to beat her
Oh.
without summoning in help.
Okay.
I've never just, I'm not like even though I've played Elden Ring for this long, because I've never like been super into the other Souls games, I'm not like playing for bragging rights or anything. I'm not
Oh,
like,
sure.
I'm like super good at this game. I'm not like trying to say that I'm good at the game.
Sure.
I just think it's fun.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's why Elden Ring is good, because it is it's easier for people like me who I'm like kind of into it, but I'm not going to be great at it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Makes it so we can succeed. So yeah, she's so ridiculous that yeah, I've yet to beat her without someone online coming. And I don't know how much you know about the community. I did get let me solo her to help me one time.
Okay.
I- You don't know him?
No, is
Oh
that like
man,
a famous user or
this
something like that?
this guy, since the first week of Elden Ring, all he's done is sit out. You have to go to the boss chambers locations and set up your summon sign to say that you can summon me like in
Sure.
this boss location. So he has sat outside of Melania's boss area every day since the game came out for like it's the first week of the game, and just
Wow.
sits there and helps people fight Melania.
Wow. Okay.
And that's why his name is Let Me Solo Her, because then he wants you to just sit in the corner of the boss room, and then he just fights her by himself in his underwear with a pot on his head and a
Oh,
knife. So
that guy. I didn't really realize he had a name. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So he can't even get hit that many times because he has no armor on, and
Right.
yet he still does it. So I got that guy one time, and it was awesome.
All right. Wow.
Might
That's
might be
dedication.
the biggest moment of my gaming career was when I saw Let Me Solo Her. And
This is a moment. Get the camera.
yeah, have you seen that boss fight at all? Or anything?
No, I think I've seen artwork of her, but no, I haven't watched the fight.
Holy crap! She does an attack called a waterfall dance.
Okay.
Jumps up in the air, and then it's like a just a series of katana swipes that just don't stop for like 15 seconds straight.
Fun. Fun.
And it she like follows you, like locks in. It's like a lunging attack. So you just can't, you just die. Like that's what happens. And she does that attack constantly.
Okay.
And usually by now in the community, people have figured out ways to like tech around
Sure.
attacks and stuff. You're like, oh, if you dodge inside to her left leg, there's nothing you can do with waterfall attack. Like some people, you can run away basically is what you can do.
Sure.
But oh, excuse me.
You're good.
I think that's probably why Elden Ring is my favorite game of all time, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you beat Melania, however you say her name, when you beat her, you can actually take her Greater Rune and bring it to the Two Fingers Oracle in the Round Table Hold,
Okay.
and you can get her sword.
Hmm.
You get Melania's sword. It's a giant katana, and you also the weapon art is Waterfall Dance. You can do the OP cheesy attack to enemies in the game,
Okay.
and so that's what made it my favorite game of all time. Is because on my first playthrough, I did a samurai build, which was just like the starting class, and I played through blind. I didn't look anything up, so I was like, I'm just gonna stick to the samurai class. Like, I'm just gonna keep leveling up these stats and just use the katana because I'm too scared I'm gonna fuck something. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't
Sure.
want to fuck something up. So I just kept doing that, and the game felt like it was designed for me specifically, playing as a samurai with a katana. Like about halfway through the game, there's a lot of different katanas that you can find and unlock, but about halfway through the game also, I got the Nagakiba, which is just like a super long katana. It's like really big. You can two-hand it usually. And so I used that for the rest of the game. I like leveled up when I got that sword. And then when I beat the game, I got Melania's katana. And it was like the game was like rewarding me. It's like, hey, you beat it. Now you have the best katana in the game.
Sure.
So it really felt like it was, and there's also a samurai NPC that shows up halfway through and also at the end of the game and kind of helped with my ending and stuff. So it felt like it was designed for me. And then I played it a second time, and I really wanted to be a dragon enchanter, like a dragon incantation user. I don't know if you've seen that, but they can summon giant dragon heads above them to like breathe fire and stuff.
Oh.
It was super cool.
Okay.
And I had found some dragon armor at one point, so I was like, I bet you I could make a dragon build because there's dragon temples. So I did that. I made a dragon build. I only use dragon armor. I use the dragon heart like incantation thing that you use for faith. I only use dragon weapons that had like dragon scales in it, and the game felt like it was designed specifically for playing a dragon playthrough. There's dragon altars and stuff, and I'm like, that's when I realized, like, it clicked. I was like, that's awesome that you can play through in a completely different way, and there's all these things that are specifically only for your character and your playthrough.
Sure.
That if you're playing a different class, you wouldn't experience at all. You wouldn't have to go to the dragon temples and get the hearts. You wouldn't have to kill all the dragons on the map to get all the powers like you do with the dragon playthrough. Like I think I only killed like 1 or 2 dragons on my first playthrough.
Mm.
So yeah, making it feel like it was a completely tailor-made different game every time you play it, depending, like if you play a magic player, like all of a sudden there's all these different there's a school of magic, that like an actual physical Hogwarts-ass school that you go to and stuff, and you get a bunch of different spells and stuff in there. It's like, yeah, this feels like it was designed for a magic user playthrough, and it's like, it's just really cool the way they do that, and they put all these little things in there.
Yeah,
I don't know,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
So how many characters have you played through start to finish for Elden Ring?
Got start to finish, I think just 7.
Just 7, okay.
I've made 11. Well, because I've made 11 characters, but I haven't gotten through. Some of them I have certain, like I've made characters from books. I'm like, you're just gonna use movesets that would align with your book character. Or some characters, I'm doing like a challenge. Like my current run right now is no summons. I'm using not only no people summons like I did for Melania. I'm also doing no summons at all. Like I can't summon like the little dogs that help you and stuff like that.
Okay.
Which is challenging, but surprisingly, I've already killed Renalia, and the guy with the 6 arms, Gorgic or whatever, the Grafted. So I've killed 3 of the Great Rune Bears, basically, which means I can go into the city now. I can go into the Golden City. Okay. So basically, I've got about half the game left, so I could finish it.
Nice.
But it's been very hard. It's been very difficult so far.
Sure.
So definitely taking a break on it. And so yeah. Anyway, sorry. Characters like that, where I have a challenge in mind, sometimes I don't actually finish the game with them.
That's fair.
Or they added a multiplayer's arena mode, which is super sick.
Okay.
There's all these coliseums throughout the world that you can go to and fight with different rules. And the players that you fight, though, are scaled to your level.
Okay, that's good.
So I have like a character that I made that was like a poison samurai character. But she's only level 25 because I just wanted to use her to duel other players. Because if I made her stronger than 25, like I'm probably gonna lose. I'll be honest with you. So I just fight other level 25s with her, and she's good. So I'm never gonna beat the game with her because I want to keep her for multiplayer.
And then did they announce?
There is New Game Plus.
Okay, there's New Game Plus. Did they put DLC into this as well, or no?
Not yet. They've had that free multiplayer update, and then they announced over a year ago at this point. I think it's like 14 months ago. It's called the Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Okay.
And they show, I'm just real quick just going through it. The Great Rune or whatever. There's like 7 kids, and you play through and fight, and you kill 6 of them.
Okay.
So this new DLC is the final one, the final great shard bearer that you did not face, Mikola. Melania's younger brother or sister, I don't really know. But yeah, she's called Melania the Blade of Mikola, actually, because she would like do his fighting for him.
Okay.
And he is a character known for dreaming, I think, like sleeping in dream worlds and stuff. So there's a lot of speculation if this is going to take place like in the dream world, or if there's going to be time manipulation, like with Plasudasax in the Great Fair Missoula. So we don't know, but because it's taking so long, everyone pretty much universally agrees that they're not just going to do a legacy dungeon style thing. They're going to do a whole open world area. It's going to be like I don't know, like Cyberpunk's
the
Phantom Liberty. With the Dogtown, or The Witcher 3 with the Blood and Wine, like those types of expansions. Wow. That's what it sounds like.
Okay. Cool.
So I'm very excited.
So whenever FromSoft works on their next title, obviously Armies of Rubicon just came out this past year, and like you said, this DLC is still being worked on. Would you like for them to continue what they did in Elden Ring, or go back to more of the formulaic with the past titles, the more streamlined one path?
I would honestly love to see a trilogy of Elden Ring games like they did a trilogy of Dark Souls. I don't think that they would do that. Honestly, I don't know if they're going to ever make a game like this again. I think this might be a one-off for them.
Okay.
We'll have to see. I mean, it was so successful. It won Game of the Year and everything. We got so many sales and stuff. So they may end up making more games in this style. but I can't remember the name of the guy. He's like the genius behind Elden Ring and From Software.
Was it
But
Miyazaki?
he is Miyazaki. That's it. He does not strike me. He's not a man that likes to repeat himself.
Okay.
Like, the reason Dark Souls 2 is so weird compared to the other ones is because he made Dark Souls 1. It became incredibly successful. Like, Dark Souls 1 sold very well. And he didn't want to make Dark Souls 2. He went off with a separate team and he made Bloodborne. While the rest of From Software made Dark Souls 2.
Gotcha.
And then Dark Souls 2 came out, was also successful, and he was like, okay, I'll come back and work on Dark Souls 3. But yeah, even then, even when he was working on Dark Souls 3, he was working on Sekiro. He was working on all those other things. So I feel like he probably won't go back to the Elden Ring universe, sadly.
Do you think they'll ever, like, obviously Armored Core was part of a series. Do you think they'll ever mix it up where it's not melee combat and do something more gun-related, or, I don't know, vary it up in some different way with still keeping that core gameplay of the difficulty?
I don't know. I mean, games like Remnant and Remnant 2 show that you can do combat like that. But I feel like they're just so good at what they're doing with the swords and stuff. Like they've meted it out, because I don't know. I feel like you can only shoot a gun so many different ways. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You shoot a gun, or you can like crouch and shoot it. But every single weapon in Elden Ring has like 5 or 6 corresponding specific moves. Like no two weapons work the same. So and it's 6 different moves each. So I feel like that level of complexity could only come from like a blade system with like magic on top of that and range. Gotcha. I could be wrong. I would love to be proven wrong, but
yeah, just curious, because they seem to do like, not medieval. That sounds like a wrong definition.
It's like medieval fantasy.
Yeah, it just seems like they keep doing it, which, I mean, obviously, you know, props to them. Each one looks cool, and their villain design and everything, world design looks great. I'm just curious if they would try a different path. Like you said, with Miyazaki wanting to do different things, it seems, but if it's if it's not broke, don't fix it type deal as well. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Especially for Elden Ring. Like,
yeah.
I like the world a lot in it too, which is sad because they probably won't come back to it. But I just don't find, even though I really did like the gameplay in Dark Souls 3, like I don't find myself connecting to it in the same way as the Elden Ring universe.
Sure. Nice. Very cool. Well, everybody, this has been another episode of the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast. My name is Bret, aka Enigma911, and today I was joined once again by TJ at TurnbasedTJ. TJ, thank you so much for the time today, man. It was a great episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Learned a lot about Elden Ring, learned a little bit more about Baldur's Gate, what I got coming in store for me. So yeah, definitely appreciate the time. Everybody, if you want to catch the podcast live, you can always go over to twitch.tv/Enigma911. You can drop a follow over there. You get notified when we go live, so you can join in on the fun and conversation. But if you can't catch it live, that is A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services. The very next week, where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, that subscriber button, that follow button, whatever you see on your screen right now, if you guys could hit that, helps the channel grow immensely. You get notified when new stuff comes out. So please do that. Helps us grow, helps the channel grow, all that fun stuff. Helps you out. We would love and appreciate you for it. TJ, thanks for hanging out today, man, for this episode. I do really appreciate you hanging on, especially for episode 200. Thanks, man.
Yeah, congrats on the 200 episodes.
Thank you. Of course, Artemis makes his episode appearance. There you go. Viewers, listeners, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for giving us a watch, giving a listen, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.